I'm Jay Rosenthal, and you are
Krista
Raymer still. We are Pot of Flowers Day 1, Toronto show number 2, 2023. We're here with Tom Stevens.
Pleasure.
We're going to talk about cannabis tourism, the broad umbrella, but before we do, tell us about your retail footprint east of Toronto in Belleville and Wellington.
Correct.
Some of my favorite places, by the way.
Fantastic. Same.
Yeah, right. Good.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. So we're the only locally owned, locally operated shops in the area, which we take great pride in. We also take great pride in presenting a little bit more of a rural retail format in the form of our shops almost look like we call them Cannabis Cabins with their lounges. So they kind of look like a bit of a cabin, bit of a cottage feel, which we feel is almost like a copy and paste method that you can drop essentially in any town under 50,000 people, which is kind of, we feel like a lot of people are focused on the Apple kind of look for retail stores, and for us presenting an agricultural product in the area we are, it just doesn't make sense. So we take great pride in going towards the opposite way. And then obviously, as I just mentioned, we have lounges in both of our stores as well. As most people don't know, edibles and beverages, because they don't have alcohol in them, once they're legally purchased, they can be consumed in stores. So, and as well with the licensing and stuff like that, with sporting events, with any kinds of entertainment on screen, as long as you're paying for it, you can show it in store.
Oh, really?
Correct. So we try to do a lot of promotions, we try to do a lot of events around stuff like that. And even when it comes to live action, as long as you're not actually profiting from the admissions from the door, that's a form of entertainment you can also present.
See? You got to know the regulations to adhere to the regulations to make money doing the regulations.
Absolutely.
How's that?
I bet you nailed it.
I did.
I mean, I think what you're talking about also is understanding where the customer is, how they want to experience it, and then translating it back and saying, how does it fit within the regulatory framework? How can we make it work and get creative about a solution instead of sitting back and saying, oh, we can't do it?
I also think what you said, like, it's very much of, well, first of all, locally owned and all that. Of course, that's important. But like, when people are in Wellington, this is what they want.
Absolutely.
Right? They might want to go to an Apple store somewhere else, but in Wellington, they don't. They want a Wellington experience. They want a Prince Edward County experience.
Correct, and I think it goes for anything, you go to these small Canadian rural towns for a reason, because they have character, they have their own unique history, and I think a lot of, smaller retailers, if they started focusing on the histories of those towns and trying to present a retail format that was reflective of that, I think you'd start to see a lot more unique brands starting to emerge, and I think it's only a matter of time before that starts to happen.
Where the brands are reflective of the actual retail experience as opposed to you having to have brands that are universal.
Or replicating a brand from somewhere else, or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Community engagement, ultimately. I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough in cannabis is that the engagement of your own community as an avenue to build and attract customers is so much more effective than necessarily going large stream, trying to apply traditional marketing initiatives. Like local store marketing is still where it's at.
Absolutely.
And creating an engagement, because ultimately it's going to be the customers. You have two types of customers. You would have your local and engaged customers who we want to have as loyal customers, and then you would have attracting tourism as people are coming in and out, and making sure that you show up in a way that's like you're the store that they want to choose to come to.
Absolutely, and even within that, you can get a little bit more micro, because we have a reserve right next to us, which is obviously a big legacy presence. So we're kind of battling from that perspective. But then also there's a huge health and wellness aspect because there's a lot of senior citizens in the area. And then we're also battling with, or I shouldn't say battle it because it's an excellent challenge to have. But then we're also dealing with the flip side of the health and wellness with the 30s, the 40s, the early 50s, the people who are, good earners. They have an excess of disposable income. They care about the personal health, and they don't, they want to get away from drinking. They want to get away from all these other things, and they look to cannabis, and I feel like there are more brands that are starting to emerge now, but they're mostly CBD brands, I feel like. There's a lot more space, I think, for THC wellness that people don't realize.
Yeah. I think the other interesting thing is all those unique challenges and opportunities to where you are physically located, and there is wine tourism, and cider tourism, and brewery tourism. That's all around there.
Correct.
And when I'm holding your card and it says cannabis and wine tours.
Correct.
I find that wine tours are generally cannabis tours for me. Like, yeah, we're going to go to a vineyard and look at grapes, but I'm going to be high anyway. But like, how is that transpired? Because it is a big part of certainly Prince Edward County. It's like you go to vineyards, go to breweries, and that is a sort of the heart of it, right?
Absolutely.
But like injecting something more fun and more cannabis-y in there. Like, how's that response been from your wine neighbors?
Oh, well. So we initially got into it because, as I said, I grew up in the area, and actually during my high school summer days, I worked for a couple of the different vineyards while they were building them.
Sure.
So I kind of saw the blood, sweat, tears, and anger that went into building them, which most people don't realize has a lot of parallels to cannabis, right? A lot of those guys, they were under the gun, they were facing a 10-year payback minimum to break even, and they were in the nitty-gritty with us in the fields getting dirty because they borrowed a lot of money and they were in deep if it didn't work, right? So I knew to get into it from that aspect. It had developed 10 years down the road from then, where things are obviously flourishing like crazy, now expanding into food and different types of culture, right? With that, there's a huge presence of cannabis, of wine tourism, and a friend of mine who I actually grew up with started off with one vehicle for wine tours. I guess it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Now he's up to 7.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yes, and so last summer he came into the store, which was our first summer, and he said he brought in a bachelorette party, actually, funny enough, and he's like, we need to do something here because this makes sense, which, was funny because I had already been thinking it. And so we decided to essentially come up with something that was a similar structure to wine tours, which is basically each person pays a fee. There's a schedule of usually 3 to 4 stops. You get a tasting, you get a bit of a kind of behind the scenes look at how things are made, right? And then you kind of get on your way and do your own thing. So we've done something similar with some wineries locally, except that we're factored in as the first stop in the morning. And because you can have beverages and edibles in-house, the idea was people would come in and have an infused tea or an infused coffee to get them going for the day, but more and more people are getting into chocolates and gummies.
Right, for the full day.
All kinds of things before they
The rest of the weekend, still
Correct.
yeah.
Perfect.
Correct. So while they indulge...
It's a lot easier to carry around than a case of beer.
Absolutely.
Or a case of
Or
wine.
a case of wine, yeah.
Absolutely. So while they indulge in the lounge, I give them a bit of a one-to-one information package on the seed to sale tracking and why it's important to the consumer, mainly the cleanliness of it and the chain of custody and how that liability is held right across to the final product, right? With regards to exception, I would say that probably 15 to 20% of the wine industry has taken friendly to it, especially the tourism side of things. Visit the county, which I'll name drop for them, but a lot of them, they're under the same AGCO gun that we are. So they're, and because it takes so long and so much capital, they're scared of their own shadow, just like cannabis producers are, right? And so as soon as they hear cannabis right away, especially the clientele that they have, they don't want to risk scaring away, the wealthy Europeans, the wealthy, from different places of the world that aren't as accepting, which I get. So I'm hoping that with collaboration with the Tourism Association, Tourism Alliance, and as well Visit the County, we can start to open up that understanding.
Still early days.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, wine was, probably 150 years removed from its actual commercial development before tourism came in, right? So it's only a matter of time.
Yeah. I love the county. I know everybody in Toronto says that they love the county, and it is true. And then the first time I went there, I was like, oh, this lives up.
It
is
also
beautiful, it's
has
fun.
it has experienced something in the last 10 years that is
Well,
wild.
And it's funny because that was when I sort of had an aha moment last summer. So I worked on a lot of these facilities, 2005, 2006, 2007. Again, it takes 10 years for you to produce an actual product that you can present to the public.
Right.
Well, you fast forward 10 years, that's 2015, 2016, 2017, right? And then people like the Drake realized, oh, there's a trend coming, and then it's an
They got on
explosion.
it.
Correct.
Places.
How It's Made, that TV show, I think they kicked it off.
Well, it's
Absolutely.
They're like, give the
Absolutely.
back end view of like something, and people want to experience that and they want to see it, and that does get very removed in the cannabis space right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why we'd like to use all of this as a foundation to drive towards building a facility out there where we can have accommodations, we can have a restaurant, we can have things that I don't want to say exactly do, but they reflect an estate winery, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the future, I believe.
Yeah. I'm down.
So when do we get to go?
Yeah, we'll do the podcast on site.
Yeah, we'll do a tour.
How about
Spread
summer?
the word so we have the resources and we'll do it.
Sure, we will. Well, that we can do. We appreciate your time today and the vision and sort of what you're doing out there. And yeah, we'll be out there next summer.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Got it.